Hello everyone, welcome to the 6th episode in Learning C series. This time I want to explain about struct. So struct it's like the combination from the primitive data type, which is char, integer, floating point, and etc. And then in the modern language, you will find something like class in Python or Java, but in C, it doesn't have class. Instead, it have a struct like this, which is contain data type like this. And then first, I want to explain about how to define struct. So from line 4 to line 9, this is the most straightforward way to define struct. And first you type the struct keyword, and then here house is the name of the struct, and then you doing a curly brace like this, and inside the curly brace there will be a data type that it contained in the house struct. In this case, house have a address, which is a char array, total room for integer, price integer, and then average temperature, floating point. And now this is the second way to define struct. This time we using type def, and if you're using type def, after the curly brace, the closing curly brace here, you define it's like the shortened for struct here. So when you want to define house struct variable, you must type it like this. In line 20, you must type struct house and then the name variable for the struct. But if you using type def, you don't need to type struct like this. Instead, you just type the alias in here, car, with lowercase in the first character like this, and then followed by the name for the variable. In this case is personal car. And now this is the third method. The third method is first you define the struct same way with the first method, but in the next line, if you want to doing type def, you can also do it like this. So after you define the struct, you doing the type def like this, type def struct, and then here is the name of the struct, and here is the alias for the struct. And now I want to explain how to define variable for the struct. You see here person is already doing type def for the person, so we can using person with a lowercase in the first character, and then the next is the name of the variable. Next is let's running the code. Let's compile it. Okay, before I run this, I want to explain a bit. So here there is a new function that I just using in this video. In my previous video, I never use this. It's called scanf. So scanf is like reading the input from our keyboard. How it works? It's like this. Let me demonstrate it. So first, it will printf like this without enter, and then it asks for the input. So when I enter the input, let's say the person name Uha, this hoo-ha will included or become the value for the name, and the name is the property of the random person, which is random person is a property. Yeah, random person is a struct person. Here's the name. Name is a char array with the limit 64, and then after that please type hoo-ha house address and hit enter. Next is we type the address. Let's just type randomly like this. This house address, as you can see in the line 33, this input, this random input will be the value for the address in random person. So random person have a personal house variable, and which is a personal house is a struct house variable, and struct house have a address property, so it will include it to the address. Let's enter, and then in the next line, in line 35 and 36, it print the random person name and random person personal house address like this. I hope you understand my explanation. And that is how scanf work, and this is how we print or access the struct property. So when you in person struct, you see in person struct it have a two struct property, which is house and car, and then to access it, to access the property of the struct, you must do point like this. If you want to access the property struct inside the struct, you just using point again like this. Okay, now is what happen if we access the undefined value of struct property. As you can see, in random person have a personal house. This house struct have a price property, which is a integer, and we don't define this price property, right? So what if we access that? Let's see what happened. Let's just random typing. See, this is the random number. Let's run it again. When you don't define the variable, when you don't define the value of the property struct, you don't define the struct property like this, when you access it with print, you will print the random value like this. Okay, now is the explanation of size of the struct. So I already explained that struct is the combination primitive data type, right? For example, in house struct, it have a char array, integer, and floating point. And as you can see, integer have a size 4 byte, and floating point have a size 4 byte. Let me do the calculator. We know that char variable have a 1 byte, right? So if we have a 128 char array, it will be 128 byte for the house. And then here integer floating point, it will be 4 at 4 at 4. And then for the car, it will be like 64 at 4 equal 68. And here person have a house and car, so the size for the person is 60 plus 140 plus 68. It will be like something like 272. Yeah, it will be like this. But sometimes our calculation about the struct size will be little off few bytes because there's a padding mechanism. For example, I hope I not wrong, in 64 byte computer, it read the, I think it read 8 byte at the same time, but for the computer with the 32 byte computer, it read the 4 byte at the same time. So to be more efficient to read the memory, it have a padding, so the computer or the CPU will be read it more faster. And then let's check the size for this struct. Just random typing. Yes, see, we correct with the size. It's 272. If you imagine the struct like if you imagine the memory like a stack, like something like stack, so the first stack will be have name variable, which is a char array, and then the second will be personal house, and then the next one will be personal car. And here I demonstrate or print the memory address for the here for the name, personal house, and personal car. You will see that it will be ordered like what I say already. Here you see that in the person name it have a address like this, and it's have a size 64. And then after, let's add this so it will be clear. So the begin address for the random person dot name, it's like this, and then it have a size 64, which is the end of the address. After it contain the random person name, it will be, its address will be like this, which is the beginning address for the random person personal house, and it have a size 140. So let's edit it, and it's exactly the address for the random person personal car. So this is the proof that you can see that the order of struct in the memory is exactly like I define it like this. So the name will be the first, the second in the memory will be personal house, and the next one will be personal car. So I think that's it. See you in the next video.